Hi, my name is Lady, and today I want to talk about the ongoing humanitarian crisis in the Republic of Sudan. Sudan is a North African country that is currently experiencing large-scale conflict, largely due to the power struggle between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces. Sudan is also experiencing mass displacement, economic pressure, and a breakdown in public health services. Before the conflict between the SAF and the RSF escalated in April 2023, Sudan was already dealing with a troubling humanitarian crisis. Since the country gained its independence in 1956, it has been subject to political instability and violent ethnic disputes that have left almost 15 million people in dire need of humanitarian aid. According to the International Rescue Committee, Sudan is number 1 on their emergency watchlist, and over half of the population, around 24 million men, women, and children, are in desperate need of food, water, and medical aid. You can support the IRC's efforts to provide rapid aid to our Sudanese brothers and sisters by donating a one-time or monthly gift on their website. Now, this is not a sponsored video. I have not been told to do this by the RIC, but I just want to lend my voice and use my platform to draw attention to what is happening in Sudan. Okay, let's get into the rest of the video. Let's get into some fast facts about Sudan to get a better sense of where the country has come from and why it is where it is today. Please note that there isn't a lot of accurate demographic data out there about Sudan. I did a ton of research about the country when I was working on this story, and I used data from reputable websites like the RIC, the World Bank, United Nations, and Minority Rights Group. First fast fact, Sudan is one of the largest countries in Africa with a population of 46 million people, and Khartoum is the country's capital. Fast fact number 2, the name Sudan derives from an Arabic phrase that means land of blacks. Number 3, Sudan is described as an ethnically diverse country with more than 500 ethnic groups. About 70% of the population are characterized as Sudanese Arabs. 30% of Sudan's population identify as Black Africans, including the Fur, the largest African group in Darfur. In the 2005 Constitution of the Republic of Sudan, the official languages of Sudan are Arabic and English, but more than 400 languages are spoken by people who live within the borders of Sudan. Number 5, Sudan shares its borders with 7 countries: Libya, Egypt, Chad, the Central Republic of Africa, South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Eritrea. Fast fact number 6 is focused on Sudan's civil war history. The first Sudanese civil war occurred between 1955 to 1972. This 12-year conflict was between the northern and southern regions of Sudan. An estimated 500,000 people, mostly in the south, lost their lives by 1970. The second Sudanese civil war lasted for 22 years between 1983 to 2005. The parties involved in the lengthy conflict were the central government in Khartoum and the Sudan People's Liberation Army. An estimated 2 million people lost their lives during that period, and the war led to South Sudan becoming the 54th independent African nation in 2011. Fast fact number 7, according to information provided by the World Bank, the secession of South Sudan led to multiple economic shocks, including the loss of valuable oil revenue and 95% of its exports. Number 8, Sudan has a high population of refugees and internally displaced persons. And finally, Sudan has had only 11 years of peace since it gained its independence 68 years ago from this year. The country has experienced high conflict wars that have affected its public health infrastructure, economy, population, and overall quality of life. The ongoing civil war in Sudan is causing a devastating humanitarian crisis in the country. I am going to share Sudan's humanitarian emergencies as covered by the RIC in their 2024 Emergency Watchlist report. An estimated 24 million people are in humanitarian need. Up to 5 million people have been internally displaced since 2023. 5 million. Not 5, not 50, not 500,000, but 5 million people. Over 1 million people have sought refuge in neighboring countries since 2023. The destruction of critical infrastructure has led to food insecurity, leaving millions without access to sufficient food and unable to access necessary public health services. The conflict is destroying Sudan's struggling economy and increasing poverty levels within the country. According to the IMF, the Sudanese pound lost at least 50% of its value between April and October 2023. Deepening poverty could also drive acute risks for children, as at least 10,400 schools in conflict-affected areas are shuttered, leaving an estimated 19 million children without education and at risk of abuse and exploitation. I don't want to mince words here. Sudan is facing a serious crisis, and the Sudanese people deserve our attention, support, and empathy. There is something known as the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, IPC. The IPC helps us understand what acute food insecurity looks like in households and in countries. IPC 1, none. People are able to meet their basic food and other needs without major changes to their daily lives. IPC 2, stressed. People are eating minimally adequate diets but must make significant changes to their lifestyles to support other non-food needs. IPC 3, crisis. Some households are not consuming enough food and have high levels of malnutrition, while others are adopting irreversible coping strategies, such as selling assets that support their livelihoods to support a limited diet. IPC 4, emergency. People are facing extreme food shortages, acute malnutrition, and disease levels are excessively high, and the risk of hunger-related death is rapidly increasing. IPC 5, catastrophe. Even when using all of their coping strategies, people have almost no food and cannot support their basic needs. Starvation, death, destitution, and extremely critical acute malnutrition levels are evident. Now let's switch back to the Emergency Watchlist report. Approximately 20 million people are suffering from crisis or worse, that's IPC 3+ levels of food insecurity, including 6 million people facing emergency levels, that is IPC 4 and higher. So this means that Sudanese people are not consuming enough food and are experiencing high levels of malnutrition. It means that Sudanese people are facing extreme levels of hunger in 2024. It means that Sudanese people are experiencing acute malnutrition. The country is experiencing high levels of disease, and the risk of hunger-related death is increasing by the day. Due to pockets of internet and communication blackouts, millions of people living in Sudan are struggling to reach their families, find safe zones, and use available mobile money services. In February 2024, all 3 of Sudan's main internet operators were reported offline, leaving almost 30 million Sudanese people without internet or telephone access for more than a month. As you can hear from the little I have shared about the crisis in Sudan, the country is in need of urgent and immediate help. Thankfully, there are organizations that are dedicated to raising awareness and funding required to get food, water, clothing, and medical resources to Sudanese people, refugees, and IDPs in the country. The RIC is helping Sudan by providing economic empowerment services, health and nutrition, and water, sanitation, and hygiene programs. The RIC has also expanded their services to support Sudanese refugees in Chad, Uganda, Ethiopia, and South Sudan. Since the conflict between military factions began in April 2023, over 2 million asylum seekers have sought refuge in bordering countries. On August 22nd, the DG for European Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid Operations published the following information on the official EU website, and I quote, "The EU has released an additional 122 million euros for humanitarian assistance in the Greater Horn of Africa, as the region continues to face the impact of conflicts and climate-related disasters such as drought and floods. The funding would help address the most urgent needs of vulnerable populations, notably with food and nutrition assistance, but also with other services to meet basic needs such as water and sanitation in locations at high risk of disease outbreaks." Ethiopia will receive 42 million euros, Somalia 40 million euros, and Sudan 40 million euros. The DG ECHO further said South Sudan is experiencing a sharp economic crisis this year, while the conflict in neighboring Sudan is also increasing displacement and the vulnerability of the population. At least 80,000 people are expected to be in famine-like conditions this summer. The prospect of new floods as of September is worrying, especially for areas that have not yet recovered from the previous 4 consecutive years of floods. I could have put in a lot more information about what's going on in Sudan, but I really want people to go on the RIC's website and read more. I want people to download their Emergency Watchlist report and really dig deep into what's going on in Sudan and even in other countries in Africa, because Sudan is not the only African country that is on that watch list, which is so mind-boggling, because in 2024, I cannot believe that there are countries in Africa that are dealing with high conflicts, that are dealing with wars. We're seeing people losing their homes and losing their lives over what? Over what? It makes no sense. And it makes me seriously worry about the continent, because Sudan may seem far away from Nigeria. I mean, Sudan is in North Africa, Nigeria is in West Africa. But at the end of the day, we share the continent. Sudanese people are African people, regardless of whether they see themselves as Sudanese Arabs or they see themselves as Black Africans. They are Africans. Okay, so we are their brothers and their sisters, and they are our family because we share this continent. Okay, I'm proudly African, and it just breaks my heart to see this happening, and to know that this civil war has been happening since last year. So how can the rest of the world support? You can support Sudan by 1, raising awareness about the ongoing crisis on your social media pages or in your offline and online communities. You can donate a gift to support the work that organizations like the RIC and minority rights groups are doing in Sudan. You can sponsor a refugee on the RIC website, and you can educate yourself on what's going on in Sudan and learn how to speak about the issues with empathy and great sensitivity. We're all going through our own stuff. Sometimes it's easy to tune the world out and turn 100% of your attention to yourself. And there's nothing wrong with choosing ourselves, but we cannot look away from the humanitarian issues occurring on the continent. We have to check out of the Lulu Hotel and have a hard conversation about the harmful effects of conflict and war in Africa. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in my next video.